I think that may have been what happened last time. Okay, so we are recording this time. Okay, this is CAD 214 MEP. We're reviewing HVAC systems and how to lay out ductwork in Revit. And today is September 9th. What I want to do is just kind of go over some general information with you about this, and then we're going to go over the entire spectrum again, on the entire process of how to lay out a ductwork system in Revit. This is work by one student, so hopefully you don't mind me sharing your work, but it's a very, very good example of what to do. So I wanted to use that to kind of show everybody. It's actually a little bit beyond what some of the things that we're requiring for your project, but I did want everybody to kind of take a look at this, and it really gives you a better idea of what we're shooting for, what we're looking to do for this project. Let me go.
For that one, it looks like it's like going through the walls. Could we do that?
Yeah, let me go over that in a second. So there's going to be I've noticed this has popped up in a couple of different people's drawings. This is a view, a crop view. So if you have this and it shows up and it's getting in your way, scroll down in your properties to where it says crop view, and we'll just unclick that. And that's okay. And then it'll expand so we have the full view on here. Here's another view, and we want to turn that off as well. So here now we have the full view. It looks like it's going through the walls on here, but it's actually going over the walls. We have the walls in place so we can see where these walls are defined and how they define the certain particular rooms. So if we go to 3D, and if we go for a side view, you can see now how these, the vents and the ductwork are actually running above those walls. So they're actually going to run above the walls and go over it. So they're laid out within this panel, but the actual ductwork itself will run over the walls. Now remember, when we created this view before, there's that plenum, that space that goes beneath the floating ceiling, which is set at 8 feet, and the actual ceiling, which is at 10 feet. So that's the space that you're using to create that ductwork in. That's why it may look a little confusing, but in this view, since it is a ceiling view, which is where we're laying out this ductwork, you want to see where the floor is, where the walls are underneath on that first floor. Make sense? Okay. Yeah, any other questions like that, just yell out. And one of the things that we have in this drawing that we didn't really talk about too much was the use of smaller and smaller vents as we go along. And this is really what we're looking to do when we're laying out our ductwork. The idea behind that is we start with these larger ducts, and if you look at some of these duct systems, the larger ducts, you're going to have more airflow that's going to be pushing through there, and it's going to constrict the further along it gets in order to continue that air capacity from this spot right here. So you're going to have like a portion of the airflow here, but if you have this thick duct that runs all the way along this way, that force of the air that's going to be coming out of this vent is not going to be the same as here. Either way, that you think about, the further away you get away from the source, the weaker it is. So that's why we're starting with the larger vents in the ductwork here and constricting to smaller ductwork here. That's also a good reason that these curved ducts are used as opposed to a corner duct, because you have to think about the airflow as well. So when you're laying out this new one, again, you can use this one as an example and have them laid out like this as smaller and constricted ductwork. The most important thing to remember is when we get to laying out the ducts that go into the individual rooms, these should be the sizes that you use when you, the size of ducts that you use for the calculations that you have created. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, you can start here. We have the larger ductwork. You don't have to do this part, but the student did it. They laid it out in a sheet already, which is nice. Where'd those sheets go? You're making a liar out of me. I know I've seen it. Where did you hide this in your, there it is. Okay. So they did put this on a sheet. We'll learn how to do this a little later on. I just want you to concentrate on the ductwork for now, but I do want you to see the way this student has laid out this information, which is really nice on here. There's a couple of things that I would want to tweak on here. Here it looks like we have some straight ductwork. Not sure where some of that's going, so you may want to go back and review that. But you can see how nicely it's laid out with the sizes of things. Like I said, you're not going to be doing that now, but this really gives you a good idea of what you're shooting for. A couple of the things I noticed when I was reviewing some of your work, I'm going to go to 3D in this one, is sometimes some of the vent work isn't being connected when you're in 3D. Like even for this one's right here, notice how this is a blue return air vent and this one is still black, so this means this is not connected properly. So this would be something that we'd want to reconnect. Some of the and how you would do that, let's just do this one right here. I could delete this flex vent. I'm going to go back to, that should be HVAC 2. Here's that vent again in this area. In order to connect that properly this time, remember I want to go to Systems, Flex Duct, and then I'm going to connect from the middle of this vent to the end of that duct. Let's go back to 3D. And see now it's connected properly. So just little things like that may need to be tweaked on some of your drawings, especially if they're not showing up when they're some of these air terminals, they're not showing up in the blue color or the magenta color they're supposed to. Here's an, go ahead.
So in my 3D, my ducts wouldn't show, but it would show in the level 1 and level 2.
I noticed a couple of those, and this is kind of that example right here, that this flex duct is not showing up. So what we want to do in a case like that, and this is a little confusing because of the area that we want to highlight that air terminal, and then you can use your directional arrows and just kind of bump it out, and then eventually it'll come up, it'll show up. It's like they're too close together and they're not catching where it's supposed to. But if you just do that, you just use your directional arrows. Here's another one right here that's not connected. But it'll happen like that. It'll show up in one view and not the other. And sometimes when we're working in this one, it does get a little dizzying, and you can't catch them all. And see, I already lost it. There it is. So I can just highlight that air terminal, and I'm just gonna move it out, and then it'll be out a little further, and then it'll catch. So you can catch them like that. I'm going to go back to level 2 here. You can see it's still caught there. And so why it's so important to have the walls in place when we have this, and I have another comment I want to make about that in a second, is that way you can see that when I move these air terminals, that they're not moved outside or they're not actually on top of a wall or anything like that. They're actually spaced where we want them to be spaced. I also noted that some of your links are not showing up when you resave it. So when you import that link, you always want to make sure that we go to File, which could be the first thing that you do, File, Save As, Project, and then rename it. And then that link should be saved there, and you shouldn't have any issues after that. And in order to make sure that that is working, you can go to, all right, go to Manage tab, and we have manage links right here, and it should be saved right here. You can add that, or you can also add it from here as well. You just hit add, find that link, and you can add it that way. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do that, but you can always make sure it's linked by going to Manage tab and Manage Links.
I think last time you said we only have to put like one error return per room, right? We don't have to put like 2 or 3 like you did.
Yeah, we only have to, you can just put one error return per room. If you only have one, the student has 2, and that's fine. It's fine as well, but when we did talk later on, I said you could just use one error return, so that's not a problem.
Okay.
All right, so what I'm going to do next is just kind of walk through this whole thing again, just to make sure everybody feels comfortable with it. It'll also cover the second half from last time, so I'm just going to run through that, and then we can go ahead and answer questions on top of that. So what I've already done here is I have I've already linked the HVAC system into here. So in order to start and properly installing our HVAC system, we want to start in a ceiling plan. So here I'm going to start ceiling plan level 1. And I'm just going to go to my north elevation for a second to show y'all something. So what I was talking about before is here's the ceiling height, and here's the ceiling height, and here's the roof height. This is the plenum. I'll change this to wireframe. You can see here between this space here and here, this is the spacing that we have to create the HVAC system. And we measured that last time, and that came out to just above the ceiling height, just below the floor. And that's coming out to 2 foot and 4 3/4 inches. So that's the size of the plenum where the HVAC system will run. So here's where the top of this point right here is where the walls end. So that's why the air conditioning spacing will be run right through this area right here. Okay, so in order to start, we're going to go to ceiling plan mechanical 1. We're going to go to our systems tool, and the first thing we're going to do is install the mechanical equipment. Just to make this easy on everybody, let's all use this size 5 16-inch outlet for the air handler, and then we'll drop that. I keep it kind of centralized right here. I already have that set to an elevation of 8'2", so that way it's not, you know, on the ground, but it's actually elevated above that ceiling.
Quick question: do we leave it in that room, or do we leave it in the HVAC room?
This is a HVAC room, but you can start it from here. I've been using this one centrally. I use this project as kind of a universal for this class. But since this is actually everything is running from the ceiling on this one, you can leave it right here for this one. When we do go into a second part of it, it'll make a little bit more sense with the HVAC room.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now remember, once we have this installed, we want to click on it, and we want to see where our outgoing air is. Outgoing air, and it says out, but it's also indicated with this X on each one of these symbols, and then the incoming air, the return air, where it says in, has this symbol on it right here, just the 1/. Now, the biggest thing that we will need to think about is the way that these vents are going to be running. We don't have a lot of space vertically in the plenum to really have these vents cross one another, which is why in this drawing right here, the AC, the return handler was actually rotated in order to make the thing, our ductwork flow a little bit better. So from this position right here, you can rotate this air handler by using the Modify tab, Modify panel, and the Rotate tool. So we'll click on that, make it active. Then we click on what we want to rotate, which is this right here. We click on it, make it active, right-click, and hit Finish Selection. When you hit Finish Selection, you're going to have this that shows up like a directional bar. It'll show you which way you want to rotate it. So right now I'm going to start at either at a 0 degrees, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it to 90 just to rotate it that full 90 degrees. And it's going to give you what that's going to look like. You know, if you did want it at 72 or 67 or whatever, you can rotate it like that. But here, I know I just need to rotate it 90 degrees. And then just click and it'll rotate that. And the reason I did that is because I want one outgoing air, one air supply going this way. I have my return air coming this way, and I'll have one air supply going that way. That way I'm not going to have any crossover on my ductwork, much like we see here. So at this point, I'm going to run my outgoing duct from this point right here. So I can just drag that, and I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to change that to radius elbow. And I'm just going to drag this kind of midpoint, click. I'm just going to bring this down in sections like this. Now I didn't change anything here, but if I wanted to use a larger vent, I just use this 16 by 16 here. I can click this vent, make it active. I can change this to a larger vent if I wanted to. Say if I wanted this to be like a 20 by 16. So it's 20 wide and 16 high, because we have to think about the height in the plenum. So we don't want it to be too high, but I'm going to use a wider vent here. And that's going to bring this around. And notice how it goes from the small vent size to the larger vent size. And then it contracts again. If we wanted to change this one, we could change this one as well. If we wanted that to be 20 and match, and it connects everything like that. And let me shrink this one. And usually that runs about halfway. And if I wanted to change, keep that at 16. And at this point, I'm going to change this to 12. I think most of them are 12 by 12.
We don't need anything in the HVAC room, do we?
What's that?
We don't need anything in the HVAC room, do we?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
And at this point, I can start laying out my terminals if I want to on this one. So remember, I'm going to go to Systems. I'm going to go to my air terminal. So this is a supply diffuser. We want this one to be there. I want to make sure that this one is at the level of the ceiling. My ceiling is set to 8 foot, so I can set that on 8 foot. I don't need these arrows that show me that it's outgoing air, because I know the symbol is that X. So I can turn these arrows off. And then I can just start dropping some of these guys in here like this. Now you can run your ductwork off of here first and then add these. It doesn't matter which way you want to do that. That's up to you. And remember, the number of vents is going to correspond with your calculations that you created. So this is not spaced really well. I would actually kind of bring this down a little bit lower. So I'm going to click it, make it active, and just tap my directional arrows. And that will just lower it. I'm going to pull this out a little bit more. And to connect these, I'll just go ahead and use my systems tab and my duct tool. I'll leave this at same at the regular rectangular radius elbows. And I'm going to change this to, if my calculation came to 10 inches, I can change that to 10 inches. Now I'll run that off of here. That way. Can run one off of here this way. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and connect those with my flex duct. This one is set to diameter 12 inches. I'm going to make that smaller, make that 10 inches to match. And we'll go from the center point to the end. And the same as here, center point to the end of the ductwork. And we'll go to 3D. See how that looks. Okay, so we see we still have that same issue where these guys don't match up in 3D. So I need to pull these vents out a little bit further, or I could shorten this up as well. Let me go back to my ceiling plan. I still have room that I can move this, so I can bump that a little bit this way. I'm gonna pull this back a little bit. It's really frustrating. I apologize, y'all. It's gonna get fixed. So we see this one worked out, this one not so much yet. Use my directional arrows. And then that will pop up. And go back to ceiling. Yeah, so it's good to have the walls here because that way I see that my vent is not moving outside of this spacing outside of or through the wall. It's actually landing right where I want it to. These you can keep lined up all on the same plane if you want. And we can continue to add our ductwork. 10 by 10 off of here. Try and get that centered with our directional location line. And just bring that back a little bit. And we just use these location lines to keep everything uniform. And use our flex duct from here back. So once you have your calculations, which you do already, it's just a matter of dropping everything where it needs to go and making sure everything is visible. So everybody got to this part pretty well. There were just little tweaks, and I believe I made notes on most of y'all's that had it. The thing that was new was the return air. And in order to do the return air, we're going to come off of this area right here. Notice that this says in, so it's the return air in, it's the supply air. And we're going to do the same kind of thing. This is starting with a 24 by 17. So we can just start and drag that up. And we'll probably back that right here. And I just ran that, and I'm going to make this just contract, make these slightly smaller as I bring them back out. Notice how as I make these smaller, the size of the vents of the ductwork contracts. And we have those laid out there. And the reason I want to run this down the middle is because I want to have my return air coming from each side of this. I'm going to have my outgoing air. Oops. I have my outgoing air coming this way. and this way. And then I have my return air, and I can run my ductwork off of each one of these. So go to my ductwork, set these to 12-12. And for this room, I would just have one return air vent here. If you've put two, that's okay. We're just going to do one. And I'll drop that there. And then I'll use my air terminal. I want to change my air terminal from supply diffuser to return diffuser. I can drop that right here. Oops, I forgot to change the height of that. So undo. Return diffuser. I'm going to turn the arrows off on it. I don't need it. I need to change my elevation height to 8 feet. 8, there we go. And now I can see it. At this time, I'll go ahead and connect that with my flex duct as well. From a center point to the end. And I got something going on because this should all be magenta. Something weird going on somewhere. So let me go to 3D. So I'm going to delete that. Delete that. Let's just redraw that. Why are you showing up blue? All right, I need to go back and take a look at that. That shouldn't be blue, that should be magenta. But you get the point. There's something wrong there. Let me redo that. Sorry, y'all. Try that off of here.
There's a question.
Yes, question? Someone had a question?
Yeah, it was asked, what's the difference between the blue and the pink?
The blue is the supply air, the air that's going out into the room. And the pink, which is the blue part, is supplying all the air within the building, like the actual air conditioning room. And then the pink line is the return air, so the air that is recycled. If we go back and take a look at the information that the written information that we were reading at the beginning of the class, you can see how there's always cyclical air, how there's air in and air out. So the pink air, the magenta air, is the air that is returning to the unit to be recycled. Systems, duct. Yeah, what is up? Duct work. And I connect that with my flex duct. For some reason, it's giving me an error on here. I'll need to look up and see why it's not turning magenta. But the point is that all the magenta lines should be correct, much like we have in this system over here. I'll get that corrected and shoot y'all an email about what's going on with that. But the point is still the same. It's still the same way that we learn how to lay it out. And then we're going to go ahead and just kind of use this as an example. It'll be in the recording, so you can do that. Any questions about that, y'all? That pretty much sums up everything from the last lecture and how to lay this out.
Yes, please.
Yes, a question?
From the number of vents, the pink and blue include. I calculated the room 101 is 2, so the number of vents it include pink and blue or just pink?
Yeah, for your room 101, you could just run 2 vents in here, like I have here, and then for the return air, you can just run 1 off of here as well. So it would just be 1 return air.
For every room?
1 return air for every room. Some people have more than 1, but I'm just requiring, 1. Some people have 2 per room, depending on the size, but we can just have 1 return air per room.
Yeah, thank you.
I just finished uninstalling the Revit 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reinstalling it right now. What do I do if I re-click the assignment and it tells me to upgrade to 2021 again?
When you're doing that, if you're